Since the last time we spoke, you've released both an album, which was probably to be expected, but you're releasing an album every year, but also a new book, which is slightly less expected.
Yes.
How would you compare the escape of writing that book to the escape of creating an album?
It's two really different things. The writing a song is kind of like creating something out of nothing, and I've always sort of loved doing that. That's the sort of the beauty of writing a song. Writing a book is like, or certainly for me writing this book, because there was true stories that actually happened. So it's like, I knew what I wanted to say. It wasn't like I was creating anything as such. It was like getting it down on paper. It felt a little bit like a chore. Not necessarily in a bad way, but it was like, it wasn't like, right, like you couldn't, it wasn't like, let's have a couple of beers and write a book either, if you know what I mean. So they're very different. And, you know, I would consider myself a songwriter that has written a book, if you know what I mean. So songwriting is what comes naturally and what I sort of feel, feels like that's what I do. But it was, you know, I just had more time. As soon as the reality of COVID struck, it was like, you know, it looks like I'm going to do a second book then. And it was, you know, it was a nice thing to do at a time when you couldn't travel, to sort of like venture in through my own head, through my own past, you know, and sort of back to the good old days. So yeah, it definitely offered an escapism, but slightly different from songwriting.
Are there any tales from Nambucca in there?
Yeah, I mean, it's my second book. Nambucca gets covered quite a lot in the first book, but yeah, it definitely comes up. Yeah.
Were there any tales that you put in the book? Because the thing with your songwriting is that it does so directly tackle what is going on in your life, say that particular year, or you're very directly translating stories from your day-to-day existence. But were there any stories that you put in the book that you felt like you couldn't tackle in your songwriting and they felt far more suited to being delivered in that story form? Not
really. I don't really, because I see them as pretty separate things. I wouldn't be like, oh, this is like, I can write a song about. I suppose story songs? No, not really. It's like, I just looked at them two completely separate things, write songs down this way. Wondering if there's, if anything, I could imagine there being like a chapter in the book that is also a song, but there's not, if you know what I mean. But I could imagine that happening in the world. Not that I really plan to do another one.
Are there any lessons you learned from writing prose that can be translated to writing songwriting?
Yeah, I've found writing the book made me more prolific in songwriting. I was definitely writing them at the same time. Generally what I'd do is I'd sit down, do a bunch of work on the book, and then pick the guitar up straight away, have a couple of beers and a smoke or whatever, and then just sort of like...
So you were kind of writing both concurrently?
Yeah, just doing... And it would be like, again, because you kind of just sort of like turns of phrase and stuff like that, which might pop up in the book and be like, oh, right, okay. And then I'll just... it'll end up being in a song as well, so stuff like that. That definitely worked as that. I think that's the sort of the nature of creativity as well, isn't it? Once you start getting stuck into something, you can sort of divvy out that energy a little bit.
Yeah. One of the other things you spoke about when you were recording this album is that by repeating these very positive phrases, they almost became like, you know, mantras. Which of those mantras from the songs felt most applicable and useful in your daily life and felt most, like they had the biggest positive impact?
Not everybody thinks we're doomed, which is, you know, it's harder and harder to cling on to that belief. But it's still, you know, I think that line, that song title kind of is a microcosm of what the album is trying to say, you know, in one line, and that is, you know, that is genuinely how I feel as well, you know, and even as times get harder and stranger. So that, you know, that's a sort of mantra that, yeah, I get to repeat every night on stage to a bunch of people as well. And it's like as from our last chat, you know, I said that how doing these songs and repeating them, now taking it on tour, I was always excited because recording this album in the studio was like nothing I'd ever done before. It was really buzzing, and I was just like, I can't wait to transfer this into, you know, a room full of people, coupled with the thing that people haven't been to many gigs and people have had a tough couple of years, and, you know, now people have a whole new sort of world war to worry about as well. So it's like taking, you know, yeah, just delivering that every night feels like really powerful, like really enjoyable from our perspective.
Performing songs, the other thing that's interesting is you obviously put out 2 records the year previously. Would that be the longest you've ever gone after writing a song without performing it in front of a crowd?
Yeah, probably. I mean, there was odds and sods gigs for me over the last couple of years. There was like when...
Did we sit down things?
Yeah,
and stuff like
exactly.
Yeah.
With the rule of 6, and like, there's not many bands that you can sell. Like promoters around the country were trying to, you know, put on a gig where people had to sit down and they could still sell booze. There's not much music that fits that description, but it's perfect for me. So it's like, I played a sheep farm in Bideford and like car parks in Bristol. Loads of stuff came up, and I was just sort of rolled all them out. So.
Was it different though, performing those songs like longer after writing them? Like, I imagine there were a few that slipped through the cracks that are maybe only coming out on this tour. Perhaps.
Yeah, there's definitely some songs from Knee Deep in Nostalgia that that kind of have never really had their time in the sun, and I don't think they'll get it now. Basically, you know, if there would have been a proper album tour for that, there would have been. Generally, how it goes with me is like with each, I'll tour an album and I'll play a massive, the sort of main body of work from the album, and then 1 or 2 will stay in the set, or you know, I'll sort of remember them for sort of continuing. But so there's sort of there's a few album tracks I guess that probably would have had a bit more time in the sun. But you know, there was also I did do a big Clapham Grand show, which was kind of the album launch, and like I had a song on that record about my teacher from school, and he came and stuff like that. So I still feel like I didn't feel like that album hasn't had, you know, haven't done it a good service, if you know what I mean.
When was the last time you'd seen him before that show?
Oh my word, like since I was at school.
Jeez.
Like, and it was, weirdly, my dad bumped into this woman from the gym who they got talking. Anyway, she had all these old DVDs of the school plays that I was in, like, sort of, you know, Midsummer Night's Dream 1998 and shit like this. So my dad got them off this woman. I'm just watching it back, which just blew my mind. And there was a part at the end, it sort of zoomed out of the drama studio, and there was a little merch stand with T-shirts. And I was like, fucking hell, I learned more from school than I think I did. You know, like that. And I really just sort of thought more and more, this guy, Mr. Lee, was like, what, you know, he was the one that sort of pushed me to getting on stage and whatnot. And so I looked him up, and he's now headmaster of a school back in Essex, which is quite a weird path, going from a drama teacher to headmaster as well. But so I emailed him. I just said, like, blah, blah, I had these things. And that just started a communication. And then I wrote a song. So I sent him the song. And and he loved it. And his kids got him tickets to come and see us at the Clapham Grand. And the weird thing, when I met him before the show, he's got a son who is, his son was the same age that he was when he was my teacher. Wow. And he had this, and he had the long hair and everything. And it was like, I went, oh, Mr. Lee. And I was like, fuck, it's like Mr. Lee from the future. So my mind absolutely blown. But it was great. And it's like, there's the sort of power of a song being able to do that within my own life and reconnect with people that, you know, that inspired me. So yeah, it was great.
Have you ever had a teacher that you've like completely devoted yourself to, like even outside of school, in terms of someone that you've learned from creative?
I did what to? That
completely devoted yourself to, do you feel like, and you've learned a lot from?
Lizzie, my wife. I think she's the only person I'm really devoted to, her and my daughter. But I mean, Mr. Lee, as far as being a nice teacher, he was an anomaly at school. All the rest of the teachers fucking hated me.
How long have you been married?
Oh,
it's a test now.
Yeah. Got married in 2014. And
had you been together a while before that?
Yeah, maybe 3 or 4 years before that.
That's interesting though, like if that feels like it was the first person that you kind of truly devoted yourself to in that way, how does that change you as a person when that happens, you know, when you're like 30 or however old you were?
I was bang on 30 when we met. Well, I don't know. It's just a sort of, it definitely felt like the next chapter of my life. And I don't know what individual lessons I did learn from it. It's hard, to be honest, it's hard to remember what life was like before Lizzie, to be honest. And even harder to imagine what I'd do without her. But as far as individual, sort of like, I don't know, individual lessons, I don't know, it's hard to think about. I guess they're written in the songs.
Yeah. You worked with the guys from the Mystery Jets on this new one. What did they bring to the songs when you were
Everything.
Everything.
Yeah, I mean, more and more now, I find that I'm still pretty much writing the same songs. You know, my songs sound very similar lyrically, very different. And for the last few albums, I sort of like will find a musician that wants to produce it, and basically I'll just be like, here's the songs, we'll keep the vocal melody the same, just take my guitar out, just rewrite all the music underneath it. That's what Kitty, Daisy and Lewis did for Inevitable Trainwreck. That's what Frank Turner did for Knee Deep in Nostalgia. And that's essentially what I asked Blaine to do from Mystery Jets. And he said him and Jack are gonna do it. So I'd written the songs. We spent a week at my house with Jack and Blaine. And we just sort of, just started the songs again from scratch without my guitar. And, I just gave them the keys to the car and let them sort of, drive it wherever they wanted, knowing that, as good people and brilliant musicians. And they were just bursting with ideas. It was such a wonderful week. And then once we got that all down, then we took it to the studio with a few more musicians came in and kind of put the body of it down. So sonically, everything you hear was theirs.
Where did they surprise you most?
The Jack, who's traveling with us now. I've known Jack for years and years, and it's unbelievable that we took so long to realise that we could make music together. And a real beautiful friendship like I said, I've known him for 15 years, but now it's turned into something, a really, really beautiful friendship. And I guess I never saw that coming, perhaps.
Do friendships change when you collaborate with someone incredibly?
Oh, mate, unbelievably so. It's a way of, as you get older, people get further away, don't you? Your sort of friendship group gets smaller and you have less reach. By reaching out to someone to ask to make a record, and bring it in, once you've been through a process like that with someone, you know them so well, because ego's got to go out the door, the whole creative process, you just sort of what matters is the music, and you just sort of, I can't think of a better way to get to know someone really than do a large creative project with them. So yeah, it's brought, I hadn't spoke to Blaine for years. He just popped into my head and I just left him a little voice note. It was like, hey, you remember me? How do you fancy doing an album? And he was available and up for it. But now I feel closer than we ever were. Certainly me and Jack and me and Blaine also, yeah.
Wow. One of my favourite songs on the new record, Stones, perhaps one of the most restrained and kind of stripped back ones. But the thing I love about it is how clear the lyrical idea and the concept is at the heart of it. With a song like that, are you writing from themes, or do you have that lyrical idea in mind when you go into it? Or how does something with such a strong concept kind of blossom for you?
During lockdown, I moved to the Kent coast, and I live, one road back from a shingle beach now. And I've always been a tree hugger. I love trees, and just sort of have loads of songs about trees and blah blah blah, and the sort of patience and the secret stories. And since moving to the beach, I started this absolute obsession with stones. Me and my daughter would just go out and we'd bring all these stones back and rifle through them, and it was just I can't see, in a very similar reason that I like trees, and almost when people like jewels and stuff like that, I was like, you can put whatever sort of power behind this stone. If you want, me and my daughter Ren, we now give them to people as presents. We've got you a stone, and if you sort of make a big enough deal about it, and they'll, sit on people's mantelpieces.
It's the same as any object, I guess. You attach memories to it, and the person
exactly,
that gave it to you.
Yeah. And it was for a minute, I thought I was going to write a whole album about stones, and I was scattered around my house, and I was just sort of and then I was reel it in, reel it in. No one needs an album about stones, but maybe one song will do. So that's how that one came about.
Through what you do in creating music over the last 15 years or so, has that made the world feel bigger or smaller, do you think?
I kind of want to say both. I think has it made the world feel bigger or smaller? Smaller. Yeah, maybe a bit more close-knit, especially this tour that I'm on at the moment. I've played on this stage, maybe 3 or 4 times. Some of the venues that I've been playing at, I've played 6 or 7 times. And it's, my touring circuit is now pretty rock solid with sort of, I have venues that I like, I go to them regularly. So in that sense, I guess it's sort of creating a world in which a familiarity around the whole of the UK.
Yeah. Thank you very much, man.
My pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Always. Respect.